the moment we've all been waiting for. Tonight it gives me great pleasure to announce the winner of the Monash University Gold Quill Award, Jill Baker.
Thank you very much. I was hoping to avoid making a speech, but no such luck. This won't surprise any of my friends, but I've never had the slightest desire to talk to a newspaper about my underwear. And I hope I won't get into trouble for saying this, and apologies in advance to Peter Blunden, Phil Gardner and Simon Bristol, who are here tonight, but I'm not sure if I was going to pick a newspaper to talk to about my undies that I would actually pick the Herald Sun. I suspect very little good can come from talking to the Herald Sun about your underwear. After all, look where it got Ricky Nixon. So when my great friend Gary Linnell suggested that I write a story about losing my husband unexpectedly and being diagnosed with breast cancer a few weeks later, I don't think he got a very good reaction. In fact, he got a really lousy reaction. I think I probably told him that he was completely crazy, but maybe in terms just a smidge more colourful than that. Sorry, Gary. I just finished a really gruelling 6 months of chemotherapy. My body was a wreck and my mind was in a fog. But there was one thing that I was really clear about, and I knew that if I was going to write my story, I needed to tell the whole story and not leave anything out. So not the underwear, and I'm taking a really deep breath here, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but blue nylon Elle Macpherson's with beading on the front, for anyone who hasn't read the story. Not my bald head, not the ultrasound pictures of my left breast, showing what I thought looked like wispy clouds of tissue, but my breast surgeon knew was a malignant tumour. Not the horrors of chemotherapy, not weird drugs that oncologists love made from the bark of a Chinese yew tree, and for God's sake, not my survival odds. The story had to be really real so that other women who've gone through what I've gone through would feel that it told their story as well as mine. Because I guess the one thing I've learned is that my story isn't actually very special. I'm actually just one of the dozens of people in my oncologist's waiting room every day. They all have a story just like mine. And it goes without saying, of course, that none of us want to be there. I've always admired greatly the people who choose to let newspapers tell their story. They do it with enormous courage and grace, and they place an enormous amount of trust in our ability as journalists to treat their story sensitively. The question for me was, would I be able to do that too? I sat in front of a blank computer screen for about 10 minutes. By the end of that day, the story about having breast cancer was finished, and when I think back on it, it just sort of poured out somehow. The next bit, of course, was by far the most agonising. It took me about a month to add 8 or 9 sentences about the death of my husband. I was very nervous on the day that the story appeared, but the reaction from readers was overwhelming and incredibly sweet. Some sent me mascara for when my eyelashes grew back. 3 women stopped me in the supermarket near where I live to tell me nothing more than they thought I looked really beautiful with no hair and no eyelashes. And of course there was the incredibly surprisingly enormous volume of mail about the vexed question of hospital underpants. My doctors are still cursing because people all over Melbourne are now refusing to put those horrible paper things on, which I think is fantastic. I'm really, really touched by this award. And there are just a few people I'd really like to thank. Firstly, to Tracy, Brett and Manny for their sensitivity and skill in editing, designing and taking the photographs that went with my story. I'd like to thank the Herald and Weekly Times for being so supportive, and a personal thanks to Phil and Simon for everything they did to help last year, even down to the hilarious offer to put a bucket in their office so I could vomit and then get straight back to work. And then to my friends, many of whom are here tonight, they drove me to hospital, they cooked me food, they took me for walks, they gave me hugs. They were just everywhere when I really needed them. I'm very honoured tonight, but I hope you'll understand that absolutely the best bit for me about winning is the simple fact that I'm here tonight to collect it. Thanks to some very clever doctors. Thanks to some very clever doctors, some really amazing nurses, I'm still here, as my oncologist would say, vertical, eyes open and talking, and I'm starting to feel great. I'm back at work doing the sort of journalism that I love, working with great words written by some of my favourite writers and reporters. I have eyelashes now, which is extremely exciting, and I even, as you can see, have a little bit of hair, somewhat like Mia Farrow on a very, very bad day. One of my friends said a couple of weeks ago, Jill, put on the black skivvy, apply for the arts grant now. With that hair, you'll get heaps of dough. But the comment I loved most actually came from one of my great journalistic friends. He took my story home to read one weekend before it was published. On Monday morning, I expected him to come back and say something really profound about my cry from the heart. He simply walked into my office with a huge grin and said, "Well, you learn something every day." I must have looked really puzzled, so he continued, "I had no idea, Jill, that you were the sort of chick who'd wear $100 a pair undies. Would never have picked it. I thought it was hilarious." Thank you very much.